Exactly. So I don't know if you heard, Donald Trump threatened the Canadian and Mexico economy with 25% tariff on all imports into the US. Did you see that?
I was at the gym yesterday morning and I was chatting with a guy and he was like, "Can you believe this?" It was like pure outrage already. I'm like, "Is this our next?" Our discussion was more about like, "Is this our next 4 years of like every morning waking up to a new outrageous thing that President Donald Trump has claimed or threatened or trying to bully?" And this time around, I'm way more cautious about reading a headline and coming up with an opinion, because this guy, whether he deserves it or not, and I'll argue that like I don't care if he deserves it or not, has been misquoted in more than anything that I've seen, of any politician or even public figure for the last
Mhm.
however many years. And I don't care if he's misquoted, but I care if I'm reading false headlines all the time, if I'm reading sensational stuff, and the rest of the Canadians and Americans should also care about that. There's an obligation to the people to publish facts and not half truths or half of what somebody said, um, and then just rolls it out to the public so that we can go to the gym and get outraged with our buddies. What do you think? What like because this is
Well, what
we don't need that. We don't need 4 more years of outrage. We need 4 years of facts, responsible journalism.
Yeah, good economic policy and facts, which hey, I would love it if we get 4 years of great economic policy growth for the global economy as well as the U.S. economy. I mean, you said he's misquoted, so why don't I read exactly what his tweet said, so we're not glossing over any of the important details.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so I'm going to pick it up in the middle. And he says, on January 20th, as one of my many first executive orders, I will sign all necessary documents to charge Mexico and Canada a 25% tariff on all, capitalized all, products coming into the United States and its ridiculous open borders. This tariff will remain in effect until such time as drugs, in particular fentanyl, and all illegal aliens stop this invasion of our country. Both Mexico and Canada have the absolute right and power to easily solve this long simmering problem. So it goes on a little bit from there, but that's basically the gist of it. So all illegal aliens and fentanyl um, crossing the
I,
border into.
I know
I
the
don't know how are you
U.S.
measuring that,
Yeah,
Vaughn.
that's a great point. How do you measure that? So how do you take this what's a true central tweet called? I don't I don't know. I
Uh,
don't what
a truth. It's just called the truth.
well a truth. Let's not call it a truth.
That's
Let's
what it's
I
called.
no no. I think you're right. I think you're right. I've heard it referred to as a truth, but let's just call it a tweet. Just to kind of keep things on a level playing field here.
Right.
Um, how
You have
can you
no
take it?
measurement. Where are we counting people at the border? I mean, I think like there's so many things that are going to happen in this whirlwind. Let's call it the maybe not the first day, but the first week of Trump being in power. I think like certainly the tariffs are getting big news here in Canada, and I think are kind of right straight out of the Donald Trump playbook of negotiating and charging people and wielding a big stick.
The art of
But
the deal
25,
stuff, right? Like he wrote a
yeah,
book about this. His playbook has already been written. If you want to read it, you can. It's just bully tactics. It's kind of childish, to be honest,
yeah,
because it's not good policy for U.S. either. Like
no,
all it
no,
does is drive up the cost of their goods for stuff that we can produce efficiently. Yeah, not good for Canada, not good for the U.S. I don't know enough about the Mexican economy to comment
right.
on their stuff.
Well, we can assume that it would have a similar effect there as
I guess
well.
we get
They've
a lot
got
of
cheap
produce.
labor.
Yeah, we get a lot of produce from and yeah, I mean that just drives up the cost for Americans.
The big one is the auto sector as well. Like the auto sector spread all across North America. And so to have all of a sudden your car parts are going to cost more because they're being built in Canada, or there's cars being built in Canada that are going to the U.S., our softwood lumber, our steel, many resources we have. There's a reason
Oil,
U.S. bought
wheat from the
oil.
prairies. Yeah.
Making all these things more expensive would then make them more expensive for the U.S. consumer as well, which would drive up inflation there. And Trump, being a lover of low interest rates, can't have both of those things at the same time. You can't have high inflation, high cost of goods, and low interest rates.
So what really drives me nuts about it is, so I was reading, I have to call out this new news source, new to me anyway, called The Logic. They're based in Toronto. So just if anybody wants to source where this came from. And they were talking about what's going to happen, right? So first thing that they reported on was that Prime Minister Trudeau gave Donald Trump a phone call. I'm like, well, that's actually brilliant. That's actually how you respond when the upcoming president or president-elect tweets out something that seems a little bit ridiculous, which is in his playbook. You give him a call. He's asking you to give him a call, right? It's like, how do we deal with this fentanyl problem? Well, actually, Canada's not the biggest problem with fentanyl. Okay, now we're not worried about this 25% tariff across the board anymore. So good call there by our prime minister. But the thing that drives me nuts is that it also reported on the premiers and the prime minister are all going to meet later today. And so I don't know if this is a Zoom meeting or an MS Teams meeting, but if they're all getting on a plane to huddle up every time Donald Trump makes a tweet, that's the worst policy and the worst reaction that we could do, because you and I are paying for this, or all Canadians are paying for it. We don't need the resources sucked into that. We don't need to pay for every time this guy says something ridiculous that our premiers all get together and huddle up and waste Canadian resources.
Well, and ideally this is a Zoom meeting. I think there is merit to huddling up as a team to talk about, okay, the new administration. Obviously we had 4 other years of that administration and what effect it had. But going forward, I think we do need to get everybody on the same team. This is Team Canada here. I understand that, Alberta might not see things in the same way as what the federal government would, or different premiers wouldn't see things eye to eye with Team Trudeau. But we still need to get everybody on the same team. We still need to decide what's best for Canada, have that united front, and figure out how we can protect ourselves as Canadians and the Canadian economy. We all have different priorities. I guess what's coming into my mind is what a Team Canada hockey team would look like. You've got all your regular season NHL battles that happen. You might not like somebody else that's going to be on Team Canada, but that guy's the right player for this team. Let's get everybody together. Let's act as quickly as possible as we can as a team, and let's be ready to roll when this hits the fan.
So do you think that this is a threat that we should be overly concerned about? I mean, in my mind, I read it like this is tied specifically to illegal immigration and fentanyl, and not tied to any sort of economic policy. This is a bully tactic using economic policy to deal with something that he may have heard on Dr. Phil about fentanyl problem in the U.S. And so I don't see it. I don't see it materializing. I'm not sure that we should be worked up. And I'm a little bit annoyed that all of the headlines that I read didn't mention that it was specifically tied to fentanyl and illegal immigration, which is, illegal immigration is something that he ran on. So he's chest thumping a bit.
Yeah.
Give him a call.
I think he's totally doing that. I think that cooler heads will prevail. Will it be a 25% tariff? Probably not, but I don't think this is the last threat. And he has imposed tariffs on Canada in the past, and we turned around with retaliatory tariffs on things that made the most sense